Hey everyone, so you've sent us some really interesting stuff about boosting mental well-being.
Yeah, articles, personal tips, even a podcast script snippet.
I know, right? It
Hmm.
seems like everybody's thinking about this these days.
Absolutely. It really is a hot topic. And it's tough to know where to even begin. There's so much information out there.
Exactly.
And that's what we're doing today, diving deep into all of this
Yep, our deep dive.
to find the most helpful, most interesting points.
Practical stuff.
You got it. The stuff you can actually use right away.
Love it. Okay, so before we get into like the specific tips and tricks, can we just acknowledge how important mental health actually is?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's not just about, being happy all the time, right?
No, it's way more than that. One of the sources, the well-being mind piece, that one really stuck with me
Oh, yeah.
because it points out how mental health affects every single part of our lives,
It's true.
like how we handle stress at work or how we connect with family and friends. Even just the choices we make day to day, it all goes back to mental well-being.
Like it's the foundation.
Yeah, exactly, for everything else.
I like that. And, the Healthline article had something I found really empowering. It's this idea that we can actually have a big influence over our mental health.
I love that.
Like, it's not something that just happens to us. We can actually shape it.
Right, exactly. It's not predetermined.
Yeah. So that's why looking at these habits and strategies is so interesting.
Exactly.
Because it gives you the power to take control and actually, make changes.
That's the goal.
Okay, so let's get into it, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, let's start with something everyone can relate to. Sleep. I mean, the Healthline article said something that really made me stop and think.
Ugh.
People who sleep 6 hours or less, they're 2.5 times more likely to experience, like, mental distress.
Yeah.
That's huge.
It really is. It makes everything harder when you don't sleep enough.
It does, yeah.
Try focusing on something complex, or you have to make a decision, but you're exhausted.
Right.
Your brain just can't work properly.
Uh,
There's research showing that not sleeping enough, if it's chronic, it actually hurts your prefrontal cortex.
oh, wow.
That's the part of your brain that does decision making, regulates your emotions, even controls impulses.
So it's not just feeling grumpy, it's affecting, how we think and handle our feelings.
Exactly.
Wow. So all those sleep hygiene tips, like avoiding caffeine late in the day,
Yeah.
keeping a consistent sleep schedule, they seem even more important now.
For sure. Those are really good starting points.
Yeah.
But there's more to it than just how many hours you're in bed.
Oh, right.
The quality of sleep matters too. Like, are you tossing and turning all night
Yeah.
or waking up and still feeling tired?
Yeah.
There could be other things going on, maybe sleep disorders or something.
So how do you know if you should, investigate further?
Right.
Should you talk to a doctor about your sleep? Are there red flags?
If you wake up exhausted consistently, even after you think you got enough sleep,
Yeah. Okay.
or you're relying on caffeine and naps just to function during the day,
Okay.
those could be signs that something's off.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. Also, things like snoring, gasping for air during sleep, those are worth discussing with a doctor.
Right. Right.
Or restless leg syndrome.
Got it. Okay, let's move on to a kind of tricky one. Social media.
Oh, yeah.
The Prewell script is all about limiting screen time, which sounds good, right?
Sensible advice.
But then there's this other advice
Yeah.
saying that watching your favorite shows can be good for mental health.
Right.
How do we make sense of this?
Yeah, well, I think the key here is mindfulness.
Mindfulness, okay.
It's not about never looking at a screen, but understanding how you're using it
Okay.
and how it makes you feel.
Right.
Are you endlessly scrolling and comparing yourself to everyone?
Yeah.
Or are you engaging with stuff that inspires you or helps you connect with people?
Okay, I see.
Is TV time a way to relax or a way to avoid dealing with stuff?
That's a good question.
It's about being intentional.
So it's not the screen time itself, it's the why behind it.
Exactly.
It can be good or bad depending how you use it.
Exactly, just like anything else.
Right. It's interesting, though, a lot of the social media talk focuses on, anxiety, comparison, all the negatives.
Right.
What about the good stuff? Like connecting with people online.
That's important too, you're right.
Yeah.
Social media can be really good for building community,
Yeah,
especially if you're isolated or can't get around easily.
that's true.
It can be supportive, a source of information when you're going through something tough.
Right.
It's about being careful who and what you follow and, not spending all day online.
Makes sense. Balance, right?
All right.
Making sure it adds to your life, not drains you.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to something a bit more universally uplifting. Relationships. Both the Prewell script and the informal advice were big on connecting with people you care about. It feels pretty intuitive, right?
Yeah.
But is there any science behind that?
Oh, yeah, there is.
There is.
That Healthline article mentions a study that found even casual, fun interactions with friends, it has this bonding effect. Boosts your mood. Doesn't always have to be these deep, meaningful talks.
So just laughing or sharing a light moment can make a difference.
Exactly.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off. It doesn't have to be some big, elaborate thing.
Right, right.
Just a quick coffee or phone call can be enough.
Exactly.
Speaking of things that lift you up, let's talk about movement.
Oh, good one, yeah.
This keeps popping up.
It does, doesn't it?
The Prewell script, the advice we got, everyone's talking about physical activity.
Yep. And what I liked is that the Healthline article added something important. Find movement you actually enjoy.
Ooh, yeah, that's key.
It doesn't have to be killing yourself at the gym.
It's so true. I used to hate going to the gym. It felt like a chore.
I know, right?
But then I found dance classes, and it totally changed how I see exercise.
That's awesome.
It's something I look forward to now,
Yeah.
and it's been so good for me, physically and mentally.
That's a perfect example of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, when you find something you like, it's not an obligation anymore. It's something you want to do.
Right.
And there's science behind that. Exercise releases endorphins. Those have mood-boosting effects.
Oh, yeah.
It can relieve stress, help you sleep better, even ease anxiety and depression symptoms.
There's so many benefits. So it's not just the physical stuff. It's mental and emotional, too.
Exactly.
And it doesn't even have to be, intense workouts.
No.
I love how Healthline quotes an expert saying, even a few minutes of stretching can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
It goes right along with that advice about soaking your feet.
Yeah, little things can help.
Sometimes it's those small, gentle movements that have the biggest effect.
It really is. It's about tuning in to what your body needs and being kind to yourself.
That's a great way to put it. Sometimes it's pushing yourself to go for a run. Other times it's curling up with a good book.
Exactly.
It's about listening to yourself and giving yourself permission to do what feels good.
Absolutely.
Okay. Moving on to something that's always being touted as good for you, gratitude.
Gratitude, yeah.
It pops up in the Prewell script and the advice, but nobody really goes into detail on why it's so helpful.
That's interesting.
So why is it good for you?
The Well-Being Mind Source actually offers some insight there.
Okay.
It links gratitude to this bigger shift in how you think.
Oh.
It's about choosing to see the positive things in your life,
Okay.
which then helps counteract that negative bias our brains kind of have.
Negativity bias. What's that?
Our brains, they naturally pay more attention to bad experiences than good ones.
Really?
Yeah, it's evolutionary. It's from way back when our ancestors had to survive dangers.
Interesting.
But nowadays, this negativity bias can make us more stressed, anxious, even depressed. So gratitude practices, they help us retrain our brains to focus on the good stuff.
Like rewiring your brain to look for the positives. I like that.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that are good for the brain and to the soul, let's talk about our last theme for this part.
Nature.
Oh, nature. Yeah, good one.
This one got a lot of love in the informal advice and that well-being mind piece.
It makes sense. It's like a one-stop shop for mental well-being.
Really?
It combines so many things we've talked about already.
Oh, like what?
Movement, fresh air. You can be social if you want.
I always thought nature walks were just for, serious hikers.
Yeah.
But then I tried a short walk in a local park. I was having a stressful week.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much it calmed my mind. Fresh air, birds singing, sunlight through the trees.
Yeah.
Like a reset button for my brain.
That's a perfect example. Even a little bit of nature can be so powerful.
Yeah.
And there's research on this too. Spending time in nature lowers stress hormones,
Really?
improves your mood, even boosts brain power. It's like a natural cure for so many things.
Yeah, kind of.
And it doesn't have to be some big adventure. Well-Being Mind has this nice story about a gardener who finds peace taking care of plants.
Oh, that's nice.
It's like a reminder that nature can help us, even in our own backyards.
Absolutely. It shows how all these things are connected, and that's probably a good place to pause for,
That's good.
We'll pick up with self-care and compassion in the next part. So we were talking about nature, how amazing it is for you, like a reset button.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. What about self-care and compassion?
Oh, good one. The Healthline article had some stuff on that, and I liked how it said to know when to take a break, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
It even had tips for those days when you just have no energy. We all have them.
We do, we do. And what's interesting here, it ties back to what we said earlier, that you can actually influence your mental health.
Oh, right.
Giving yourself permission to rest, to recharge without feeling guilty about it, that's huge.
Yeah, instead of pushing through and just feeling worse.
Exactly.
It's like choosing to be kind to yourself. And that reminds me, Healthline said something else that really stuck with me. It was like, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's essentially, you deserve to function and enjoy life the best you can.
That is so powerful.
Isn't it?
And so true. We're always holding ourselves to these crazy high standards. Yeah. But we have to remember, we're human, we mess up, we're flawed, and we're worthy of love and compassion, especially when we're struggling.
It's funny because I think we're much better at giving that compassion to others than to ourselves.
That is so common.
We're our own worst critics, right?
Often, yeah. But learning to treat yourself with the same kindness you'd show a friend, that's essential for mental well-being.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that leads to something else that's super important, getting support when you need it. I liked how Healthline pointed out that all these habits we're talking about, they're great, but they're not a substitute for professional help if you need it.
100%. Think of these strategies like tools in a toolbox.
I like that.
They help you manage things, keep your well-being in check, but sometimes you need an expert.
Yeah.
To deal with the bigger issues, the stuff that might be underneath it all.
And there's no shame in that, in getting help.
Absolutely not.
In fact, I think it shows strength and self-awareness.
For sure.
Knowing you need support and reaching out, that's a big step.
Huge. It's like going to the doctor when you're physically sick.
Right.
We don't think twice about that.
Yeah.
We need to have the same attitude towards mental health.
Okay, so what are some signs that maybe someone should talk to a therapist?
The Healthline article actually lists a bunch, and they're good ones to watch out for. Like if you're always feeling sad or anxious,
Right.
changes in how you sleep or eat, having trouble just getting through the day, those are all signs it might be time.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be a full-blown crisis either. Therapy can be helpful for anyone who wants to work on themselves,
Yeah.
improve their relationships, understand themselves better.
I think a lot of people think therapy is only for people who are like really struggling or in a bad place.
Right, that's a common misconception.
But it can be good for anyone.
Absolutely. And the good news is there are so many resources available now. You can find therapists online, through your doctor, even through community organizations. It's about finding what works for you.
Yeah, and speaking of what works for you, I thought it was really interesting how the Well-Being Mind Source talked about how society affects mental health.
Yeah, I saw that too.
He's like, it's not all about our choices and habits, right?
Right.
The systems we live in matter too.
They really do. Things like money problems, discrimination, feeling isolated, that can all have a big impact on your mental well-being.
Yeah, it's an added layer, isn't it?
Definitely.
It's not just about fixing ourselves. It's about making the world a better place for everyone, a more supportive place.
Exactly. A society where everybody has the resources and support they need to truly thrive. Addressing things like poverty, discrimination, the lack of affordable health care.
That's a big task. But I guess even small actions can help, right?
For sure. Every little bit counts. It could be checking in on a friend who's having a tough time, or volunteering at a place that supports mental health.
Yeah.
Or speaking out against the stigma, the discrimination.
Right. It all adds up. And that actually leads us perfectly into the final part of our deep dive, where we'll look at some more specific resources and tools. Okay, so we're back for the last part of our deep dive into mental well-being. We've covered a lot, right?
Yeah, we have.
From sleep, social media, self-care, even how society plays a role.
It's all connected.
Before we wrap up, I'm curious about the Well-Being Mind Source. What other tools and resources does it suggest? I noticed it really emphasizes community, collective action.
You're right, it does. One thing it talks about is peer support groups.
Oh, yeah.
They can be really helpful. Well, they give you a safe space to connect with people who get it, who understand what you're going through.
Right, because they've been there themselves.
Exactly. It can be so validating to share your story and realize you're not alone in your struggles.
It's like that saying, a problem shared is a problem halved. Just knowing someone else gets it can make a big difference.
It really can. And these groups, they often have great advice, coping strategies, because it's coming from people who've lived it.
Makes sense.
The source also talks about getting involved in advocacy, activism around mental health issues.
Oh, interesting. Like making your voice heard.
Exactly. It's not just taking care of yourself. It's about pushing for change, making society more supportive and inclusive for everyone.
Right. So it's not just personal. It's bigger than that.
Yeah, it could be signing petitions, contacting politicians, even organizing events to raise awareness,
I did.
making sure mental health is treated as important as physical health.
Yeah, that makes sense. But sometimes it feels overwhelming. Like what can one person do?
I get that. But even small things can add up. Sharing a helpful article online, talking openly about mental health with friends and family,
Right.
donating to a mental health organization, all of that helps.
I like that. It's like we all have a part to play. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our deep dive.
Wow, time flies.
We've really explored a lot, uncovered some great insights. It feels like we've given our listeners a whole toolkit for their mental well-being journey.
I think so too. Mission accomplished. But it's important to remember this is just the start,
Oh, right.
The journey to good mental well-being, it's ongoing and it's personal.
Yeah.
It's about trying things out, finding what works for you, what nourishes your mind, your body, your whole self.
What I've learned is that there's no one right way to do this.
Nope, definitely not.
What works for me might not work for you, and that's okay.
Exactly.
It's about listening to yourself, being kind to yourself, and asking for help when you need it.
And never underestimate the power of connection, whether it's with loved ones, a support group, or getting involved in activism. Connecting with others makes a huge difference.
That's a great takeaway. So remember, you have the power to shape your own mental health. Take what you've learned, try these strategies, see what works for you.
And be patient.
Yes, be patient with yourself.
The journey to mental well-being, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
That's a good way to put it.
There'll be good days and bad days. But if you keep going, if you're kind to yourself, you can build a life that supports your mental health.
That's a great message to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.